I'm the Native Literacy Coordinator for Can-Am Indian Center in Windsor, Ontario. What we're going to do today is that we're going to talk a little bit about the program that we started. Kanikuliyo means good minds in Oneida, and it's very similar in the Mohawk language also. But the program came about as a result of somebody had mentioned to me about a focus program, and I said, "What is a focus program?" But when they finally sent it to me, and I said, "That's not what I wanted." And then that's when I got with Brian, with Naganan Associates, and he was able to develop some presentations for us. But Kanikuliyo means it's a communities of attachments and Indigenous literacy learning tool for change. And as you can see, Brian's myself and Brian Nukes from Naganan Associates. Our agenda today will be the smudging and explanation in regards to what we just completed, Kanikuliyo, Good Minds. I thought of that name because to me, everybody's got a good mind, whether they're level 1 or level 5. And we have the context of what our program's all about, our program streams, program features, the model, the outcomes, and the lessons learned. The innovative program addresses the complex issues facing literacy learners and communities within a cultural context with Aboriginal ethnic population. The program's community, employment, education, and self-cultural connections framework, suggestions, pathways for employment, readiness and personal empowerment, and organizational partnership for change. Communities of attachment, resilience, and respectful and culturalization are key concepts employed. The background of our program started in November when we got the extra funding, the new funding, our first year, so we were able to do this. It started in mid-November and it ended in December. It was like a pilot project. It was a 6-week program. And it was funded by the Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities. We had 6 to 10 participants, and as you're aware of the guidelines, 19 years or older, they were unemployed, out of school, and recipients of Ontario Works, and also displaced workers. Our program ran for 6 weeks, Tuesday to Thursday, between 10 a.m. and 2:30. The second program we ran, where we had a 1-week break in it. Our program was unique because it dealt with high retention rates, high learner satisfaction ratings, and significant outcomes in the area of self-direct learning styles, a sense of hoping among learners. And if you can see at the bottom, that's one of the comments one of the learners made. And this was, we had put out a survey. Every time we had a speaker, or after a 2-week session, we give them something similar to what they're asking you to fill out. It was similar to this, the workshop evaluation, what they thought about each session, and that was what one of them commented on. And we started out with 6 learners, and 4 completed the program. 1 learner obtained employment, 1 withdrew from the program because of health issues. And we had a diverse learning group. We had male and female, 21 to 50 years old, Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee identities. The Anishinaabe is the Ojibwe, and the Haudenosaunee is the Iroquois descent. And we had first and second generation urban experience, range of goals, basic education, GED, high school, diploma, employment, and college entrance. And there's just another comment that they made at the bottom. The support services we had for them. Participants were provided with materials and supplies, access to computer software and internet. Some individuals eligible for incentives and services, bus tickets, etc. We provided every day. We provided lunch, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We had a brunch for breakfast, and then we provided a hot meal. And then professional support available on site. We have referrals because we come from Can-Am Indian Center. We utilize all the services with the other programs. The psychosocial contact, the learner contact was lack of self-confidence, limited expectations, lack of goals, isolation, dependent, lack of resources. The community contact, limited cooperation across agencies, limited opportunities for knowledge, resource sharing with those with fewer resources. The cultural content is the history, beliefs, values, knowledge, practice, and aspiration pertaining to our ways of perceiving, relating, thinking, and doing. Cultural contact with those things we carry from our past and from our desired future into the present. Kanikuliyo, the Good Minds, is a community-based program for Indigenous learners with a cultural content. Kanikuliyo embraces and supports Aboriginality. Kanikuliyo focus on student, not on conformity. Cultural contact, the historical legacy of education as cultural imperialization, and Aboriginal people being trained for roles with Western society. Is there any questions?
One of the things that we did start to do as part of this activity, and we do have, like I mentioned, we do have the handout. So in terms of your note taking, it'll be up to you at this point. Thanks, Jolene, for passing those out. Gordon was going to be talking about particularly this area. And I know for some of you, some of the words might be a little bit strong. Words like imperialism, words that we use in our classes related to issues of colonization, issues of racism, issues of disadvantage, issues related to marginality. And for most of our learners, those terms are not abstract, theoretical terms, but those are part of lived experience. Certainly poverty and the association around that, they're very, very clear around what their experience was about. So other words that were used were ethno-stress and cognitive imperialism, and as I mentioned, racism and discrimination and prejudice. Those are part of the lived experience of Indigenous people. And so part of it was to allow people to know that that this program was coming from their experience as Indigenous people, and also I know that some of you are aware, many of you having involved yourself as Indigenous peoples, is that there was the purpose of residential schools, which happened from the early 1800s as late as 1986. The role of
of education as provided by the state was to get rid of the Indian in the Indian and to civilize and Christianize. And so that in many ways, a lot of our literacy programs are just an extension of that original policy. So that's part of our assumptions that were built into our program. Which then puts us into a conflicted situation with regards to how do we fit, given those kinds of challenges and also those kinds of conflicted relationships between the individual, the state, and the community. So part of it was to describe some of that landscape in a way that our learners could appreciate that they were not necessarily the problem, but they were survivors of a series of history, a series of sociology, a trajectory that wanted them to be turned into consumers and to fit into a society which came from another place. And for a lot of them, this was news to them. That it wasn't necessarily news from them in the sense of to hear those words said in that particular way. Certainly their lived experience, their emotions had, for many of them, created the situation of non-expectation, non-goals, poor self-esteem, poor self-confidence, and so on. But to start to name your world. And we talk about that in literacy as conscientization. Paulo Freire and many others that have been thinking about these kinds of issues around how does one empower people. So that was what Gordon was going to talk about. Okay, so here we see the good minds within a social and psychological context, but also within a cultural context, a historical cultural context. And we all work within those contexts in some sort of a way, but for the most part, we're blind to the cultural context by which we work. To suggest that literacy in Canada or Ontario is cultural or cognitive imperialism, you may not have thought of that before. I thought we were just getting people a job or providing essential skills, but from another lens, it can be interpreted as imperialism. And by the way, I'm not talking about the margarine that we buy. Imperialism. Okay? Want to hit it? So one of the thoughts around that, so here we're talking about values, what we value. And I was in a previous workshop in which we started talking about the soft skills, or the soft content as opposed to the hard content. Well, I do know as a man the difference between hard and soft, but in this context, that was a joke, by the way. This is sort of Indigenous humor. Darlene's not even. my wife, I'm starting to feel a little bit embarrassed. I don't know where that came from. Anyhow, that's not my wife, by the way.
Your deep psyche.
Yeah, my deep, wherever it is. Anyhow, so one of the things that we know that we recognize that we're talking about quality of life as different from just making do or surviving or getting more consumer items. And I think it's really important, given the kind of social political context that we're in now, post 9/11, well, I don't think we're past this depression that anybody might have noticed that we're in. We're certainly not past climate change, but we're in a very different environment that you and I grew up in. And so really